right. We'll open this meeting at 7:04. Or not open, come back from executive session. Is there any public input at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll go to our student report, and in lieu of his sister, Jerlyn, we have Jensen Kaithamado.
To start off, term 4 term 4 started on April 4th, and the student council hosted its annual Mr. NRHS tournament, and Jason Tanyan was the winner. The student council has also been awarded the Gold Council, which they applied to the National Association of Student Councils, and only 1 in 10. They were 1 of 10 in the state to win the Gold Council award. And on April 7th, they had a NEMAS meeting, which is Northeastern Student Councils. And to continue with that, they also had, they also continued with the conference with Gabby Lanzaro ran for vice president. Fortunately, she didn't win, but she was a very prominent member of student council and the executive board. The boys lacrosse team played Danvers in their first game. They won. AP informational meetings were held throughout this past week and will continue this week, where students get a perspective view of their future class that they may want to take. Junior prom was held at the Hillview on Friday, April 8th, and it was a great success with over 235 students participating. Maskers also competed in their Massachusetts Drama Fest on April 2nd, and although they didn't place in the top 3, many individual awards were presented to them. The art department also held their April 5th art show. Girls lacrosse won their first game against Revere, and they'll be playing Linfield next. And over 320 students signed up for spring sports this season. The boys lacrosse team will be playing 4 games this week, and softball plays a home opener today against Masco. Sorry, they play their season opener at Masco, and tennis versus Linfield today. And baseball will be playing Masco tomorrow. Spring sports are currently in full swing. And for my student report, I have a Spanish project that I did called Viajar y Aprender, which is traveling and learning. And it kind of encompasses the idea of going to different countries that are Spanish-speaking and learning the language there. And one of the specific places that I chose was Costa Rica, and they have a place called Elisa, where they teach tourists and business professionals to speak Spanish. And they even offer college credits so people can go there and learn the language. And they even offer the ability to stay with host families so that they get a sense of understanding of Spanish culture.
Something you think you would do?
I'm not sure.
You know?
I'm not sure yet, but I definitely would love to travel and see Costa Rica. It's beautiful.
I believe high school went 4, almost 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Just wanted to make a comment. I had an opportunity to attend the Maskers performance in Boston. I know Mr. Bernard was there. They were great.
Fabulous.
A great show. They had made some changes since the first time they performed it in the first round, and it was great. They did win some awards. They won for set, projection. There was one acting award.
Leading actress, I think, yeah.
Ashley Stamagna
Ashley Stamagna, yeah.
won an acting
Right,
award.
right.
There were a bunch of folks that won for the set and for the projection,
Yeah.
which was really effective. So it was really good.
Very well done.
And it's a great accomplishment from being only one of 14 schools to make it out of 114 or 15
Mhm.
that started
Right.
the competition. It's great.
All right, you're more than welcome to stay.
I
Okay.
gotta head out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jensen.
All right, Superintendent Bernard, would you like to do the MSBA update?
I would, Madam Chairman, thank you. So just a few things to take note of. Work is progressing down at the site of the former high school. The landscape sub-drainage has been installed in the area of the new softball field. The layout and structural backfill for the sidewalks at the, what I'm going to label the southeast parking lot of the site of the former high school has begun. As of last week, last Wednesday to be specific, the mixing and spreading of the manufactured athletic loam at the all-purpose field was in place at about 25%, so it's probably a little bit further along from when I wrote the report to you as of last week. The grading of the slope in the area north of the new softball field and prepping of wetland replication area has begun. A second day of training on the audiovisual equipment was held. There were a number of us that attended that on March 31st to continue to learn about the nuances of the many AV systems in this building. We're continuing to learn. There is a lot of work still to be done. We have a meeting, not in your report, but we do have a meeting tomorrow, kind of a building progress meeting at 11 o'clock at my office with the folks from Gilbane, PMA, Durham Whittier, representatives of the Secondary School Building Committee to just kind of get a status report on where things are currently and where they're going to be going in the next few weeks, as well as a full building committee meeting tomorrow night. So things are progressing well. There is still some work to be done with the punch list. Folks from Durham Whittier have been on site, kind of back punching that list, which is a good thing. And I would say having representatives of PMA in Gilbane on-site in this building on a daily basis has been helpful for addressing the concerns that the administration has had with relation to the punch list items. But progress being made, still some work to be done, and as you know, a lot of work going on down at the site of the former high school.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
This might be a good time, John, to just discuss the Athletic Facilities Committee and where we are.
I think that's probably a smart thing. Yeah, this seems appropriate. Yeah.
We did not have our meeting on April 5th. We were going to move it to tomorrow, but we're also putting that meeting off because we don't have any definitive updates. We are going to, tomorrow, I think, seek a vote of the
Correct.
SSBC to ask the contractor to not spread spray seed on the loam that's going down. We will know by the end of this week whether we're getting that large donation. If we get that large donation, we have met our goal, or beaten our goal, actually, for the project. We're moving ahead. Rita Mullen and Marty Tilton at Parks and Rec are working to get engineering done for the irrigation system, the plan, and they're moving ahead with that. And then it goes out to bid. If it's finally determined that we have to go out to bid, we think we do, we're pretty sure we do. And then within probably 5 weeks, we'll have the bids back and
For the work to begin.
work to be done. We're hoping to get sod down and the irrigation in no later than June sometime, because our goal is to hopefully have that field ready for the fall season.
Correct.
It's really needed. We're beating up a lot of fields in this town. So good progress made, and the reason why we postponed the meeting tomorrow night again is that we don't have anything new to add.
Right.
What I provided right now is an update that the Athletic Facilities Committee is aware of. So we'll schedule another meeting sometime late April or.
I think probably after the meeting that regarding the donor happens on the 14th,
Right.
correct? So probably
Right.
be sometime the week of the 25th of April or
Right.
thereabouts.
Yeah. That's it.
All right. Thank you.
I
Mike,
just
would
have
you-
one question, sorry, just came to me. Where are we with the bathroom facility?
John, you,
Yeah, I have a little bit of an update on that, not an awful lot. So the gentleman that Mr. Webster and I had met with about 5 weeks ago or so, who had done a similar type of a facility at the Essex Technical School, called me on Friday, and I'm working with him right now to kind of get us some pricing on, I would say 4 prices for a facility at the turf field that would be either a combined lavatory facility and concession stand. So that's kind of one price, with 2 finishes, a price for 2 exterior finishes, either brick or what they call like some sort of a brush finish, okay? So there's 2 prices. The other 2 prices would be on just a lavatory facility with those same 2 exterior finishes with no concession stand. So when I spoke to, his name is Frank Demando from Shea Concrete in Wilmington on Friday, when I spoke with him, he was understanding that we were kind of, on an aggressive timeline, that we're eager on this project. We're hoping to have as much concrete information as we can to bring to the town for the portion of the financing that needs to be done to construct this facility so that we can have full use of the field. He indicated to me that he would hope to have that to me tomorrow. So we have a design, we don't have the cost. I'm hoping we will have that tomorrow. At the time, when I was speaking to him on Friday, I was hoping to have that because I knew we had a meeting tomorrow night, and that a lot of folks that are kind of part of the athletic fields portion of that committee would be interested in this. So, but now that we're not meeting, I'm not going to tell him that.
We
I
also-
still would like to get the pricing soon.
Michael, and I think you're on the
Capital
CIPC.
improvement.
CIPC, right?
Yeah.
And they have a meeting Wednesday,
We,
right?
we do have, there will be a warrant item asking for money for engineering and design.
Design.
In June.
No,
And the
yes.
June, it'll be on the June town meeting. And then the plan after that,
Yep.
I think they were talking up to $50,000 for that.
Yep.
And then the
Yeah.
plan after that, once the engineering and design is done, is to ask for money in October for the project at the October town meeting. So it doesn't give us much time between June.
To get everything planned.
I mean, I don't think it's extensive design, but
I wouldn't think, that would seem to me to be a reasonable
Sure.
window of
basically,
time.
it's basically a concrete pad to put a building on.
Mhm.
And then how do we tie in electricity, water?
Plumbing,
And
exactly.
wastewater.
So the idea is to have this plan in place for approval by building and plumbing inspectors for February of 2017. That would bring us to the year benchmark that they had given to us.
Yeah.
February 3rd, I believe, 2017.
Right, February 3rd, yeah.
Mm.
And it is, and the CIPC is aware of it.
They are, yep. We discussed it at the last meeting on Wednesday, and we'll discuss it again on this Wednesday. And I think this Wednesday, the committee's hoping to wrap up its work and finalize the rankings of the requests.
Okay. Would you like to go right into the fiscal budget update?
Sure, so in your packet this evening, as a follow-up to last Monday evening, April 4th's budget public hearing, I think we included the latest, update on the school budget, which is essentially the budget that was presented in detail last Monday evening. And I think it's fair to say, I thought that the public hearing was a very healthy, productive discussion with many members of the community and parents and so forth that came out to hear the presentation. We certainly, had a nice, healthy discussion for over 2 hours last Monday evening. And at this point, the budget is somewhat status quo from what was presented. We are still working off a budget gap between what the available finances are and what our request is, which again is reflective of a 4.3% budget increase over the existing FY16 appropriation, which is a little over $1.1 million. But the existing projected budget gap, which was discussed at the last Monday evening, is the $350,440. So some key next steps in the process. We are due to present and discuss the FY17 school budget with the Finance Committee this Wednesday evening. We have a finance planning team meeting this Friday where we hope to kind of revisit the available revenue of the community to fund FY17 school and town budget. So that's certainly a couple of important key meetings I think will happen this week on Wednesday evening and Friday morning that I think will kind of guide this discussion on the FY17 budget as we get closer to the date that we certainly have to vote the budget. So, I think, at this point, I just really wanted to turn it over to the committee, and, there was, again, that healthy conversation and dialogue that took place last Monday evening, and I think really just give an opportunity to open it up to the committee about just really thoughts on where things stand. If there's any other questions?
John, you had given us some additional information in terms of more justification for those other three positions, or at least two of the three positions.
They did.
I thought that was, I fully support those positions, but I thought that even helped us more, that backup. The more I think about it, I know these are in the 2021, NRPS 2021. They're almost I know why they weren't, but they almost should have been in the level services budget, based on reading that. So,
I don't disagree. I think it's a little bit of hindsight being 2020,
Right.
but not totally. But, it was part of our strategic plan, but we also, I think, do recognize more and more that student services have changed, too. The needs of students have been changing over the last few months, even, since we started the whole budget development process. And so, because of that, it brought a little bit more into focus. I thought a further explanation was warranted as to why we see an additional psychologist at the middle school and an additional special education teacher at the high school as being in a large way similar to the three positions that we've been talking about as kind of the transition programs that to offer those services to students in district. While I don't want to make it sound like it's solely an economic decision, because it isn't. It happens to be, I think, a philosophical belief that we all share, that we believe in educating our students in our district. There is an economic gain by having staff in-house that can service the needs of the students without having to take a look at potentially an outside placement. So as things have kind of evolved over the last couple of weeks even, and I think we're in more of a position to talk about the value of those positions, I thought I would talk with our director of PPS, Cynthia Conan, and the two principals, the middle school principal and the high school principal, about just providing some greater detail around those two positions, which is what I emailed to all of you today. So the reality is that I think we need those two positions to, as well as the additional academic teacher for the high school, to, I think, live by what we believe is the philosophy of this district and upholds our vision and mission.
the other issue that I had brought up, we all talked about it at the hearing, was the parking fee. And I am going to make a motion to eliminate the proposed parking fee. I'm just wondering if I should wait till our next meeting when all 5 members are here to vote on it.
Well, I would suggest that for that reason, and also, let's see what comes out of the,
Right.
the
I-
presentation of the FinCom and the,
It sounds crazy that I want to make a motion to eliminate $45,000 in revenue, but I just, the more I think about it, and I know I talked to Michael, and I know there are a lot of schools that do it, it is, to me, it's almost an insult. The fees already are an insult, and to think about charging for parking, I can't even, I just can't justify it.
Yeah, it's like turning down the offer of somebody to go down here on Park Street, stop a couple of cars and hold the people up and get the money.
Exactly, right.
System, I mean, it's that obtuse. And as far as those two positions, that they're very, very compelling, that it's gonna cost us money if we don't on those positions.
Right.
I mean, it's one of those things that has to happen.
I believe so.
I think Mr. Webster also got the email from one of the people who was here last week, and they thought that, we're putting all of the burden for that 45 basically on seniors
And some juniors, but a lot of seniors, yeah.
in the high school, and for something that already exists and everybody in town has already paid for. So it's I think that's something that we need to move out of the revenue column.
Yes, sir.
And,
I'm gonna wait on that, but I think we can, I'm gonna make that motion, or someone can make that motion on the
well,
next
we have
meeting.
to second it.
Yeah,
So-
okay. But I just, I have a hard time, the other fees, you can look at them and say, you get to ride on a bus, you get to play a sport, you get to have an activity. They're wrong, we know they're wrong, public education, but we shouldn't be charging fees. You get to go to kindergarten, you get to go to preschool. For this, you get to park your car. I just can't even,
In the parking lot that you bought.
right, in the parking lot that we just paid $123 million for. So I just, anyway.
And I think a concern that another parent voiced, and I've heard from others, is that there's a huge burden of just on the secondary kids alone on
Right.
a lot of these fees, the extracurricular, the sports. I think that, they do carry a lot of the burden.
If you have kids playing sports and taking a bus at the middle school, and as someone in high school that drives, you could be spending well over $2,000 a year,
Hmm?
easily. That's really insane when you think about it. So if we can save the burden of $200, and then maybe Michael can work some magic and find $45,000 somewhere else, but, so I think we'll do that at our next meeting.
The law says we can't charge a tuition for.
Exactly, that's about
things that are-
where it stops, right,
You
no
know,
tuition.
Where is that line?
Yeah, my hope is that the revenue availability will be such that that comes off the table, because I think we've looked about as deeply as we can look to bring you what you have tonight. And we fully recognize and understand and respect the notion of the parking fee. I mean, it's distasteful, and we get that very, very clearly. But it's just a matter of we're trying to close a gap that exists, and, just trying to look everywhere and but it's not a great suggestion. I hear what the committee is kind of hinting at tonight, even though it's not a formal vote, but, I certainly understand that. I think Michael does too.
It's out of desperation.
Exactly.
It's like we're all scrambling.
They all were. All the fee
I know.
recommendations
Where's the next
were.
fee we can add?
They were all rooted in the
That's my
same,
concern.
it was operating on trying to close a budget gap, and that's it.
If the state had said 15 or 20 years ago, no, fees are illegal, it's up
Mhm.
to the state to come up with more money for the school systems, we wouldn't be down this road now. But, the road is
Right.
fully paved right now, and it's going to take a lot of work to break up that road and get rid of all these fees. So,
I just had one comment about the middle school, school psychologist and the guidance counselor. I think of the 3 proposed positions, I think that's by far the most important. I think the social emotional well-being of our middle schoolers, given the current caseloads, it's shocking to me that they can do what they do at this time, and I think that is top priority for me.
I would tell you, Mrs. Copy, that the administrative council agrees, that list is in priority order. I would say for quite some time, that middle school psychologist position has been recognized as the number 1 priority of those 3. So we tend to agree.
I agree too.
How long have we not been putting off hiring, but,
At the middle school?
yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
It was several years at the high school,
I think I
and
started
we
pushing
realized
for
that.
that
it's
7
years,
ago.
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know that it's really, I can't say, because I wasn't the superintendent, prior to last year, but I don't know if Ms. O'Connell or any other middle school principal before her had this position on there. But I think it's been driven by facts. It's been driven by cases and examples of student need. And I think that's just, as you see in the rationale that I gave to you all today, that's where the justification is just becoming more and more apparent, I think, to have it, so.
I think that the whole
Was part of the strategic plan, by the way, excuse me.
the whole social and emotional issues thing
Mhm.
has always been there. But in a community like North Reading, I don't think people realize it as much, and not as much attention is paid to it until you start getting the examples and seeing the cases. And you say, our kids, they're different problems maybe, but they have just as many problems as kids in an urban district or kids in a rural way out in the western part of the state district. And I know we've talked about having a separate social and emotional program, which at some point we may get there.
We have been talking about that.
So,
right.
It certainly has been a request for at least the last couple of years. I'm going back and looking at some data, so it's been on the forefront.
Thank you.
Which I would be just very quick to say that part of the value of our strategic plan, which we all put an awful lot of time into and thought into, is the fact that we put these needs out early with the idea that, we start to realize, hopefully, within the 5-year window of the strategic plan. So I think by having something like the middle school psychologist, or what was a high school guidance counselor position, and countless others, when we start to talk about them in a very, I think, thoughtful and detailed way through strategic planning, I think it helps to build an understanding among people and within the community of the need. It's not something that we just all of a sudden wake up one day and say, oh, you know what, it would be nice to have
Right.
X. It's a thought, that's the value of strategic planning.
Well, what do we have at the high school now? 4?
Guidance counselors, there are four guidance counselors, the fourth one being new this year.
Right.
The fourth position being the additional one school psychologist
Yeah.
and one school adjustment
So
counselor.
essentially, we have 6.
Six
people in
people
that,
in that department,
Yeah.
so to speak, right.
Yeah, okay.
And just 2 at the middle school.
Yeah.
There are 6 at the high school for the 800 students. There are 2 at the middle school for the 640 students.
It just
So
doesn't make any
that's way
sense.
up.
Or 600 and whatever it is. It's a ratio of 300 to 1, which is what we were at with the high school not
Right.
that long ago. The school adjustment counselor position at the high school and the fourth guidance counselor are all within the last 3 years.
Yeah.
The school adjustment counselor, this is her 3rd year. And the guidance counselor, this is the 1st year. So it's, you
And
see, it's.
You hear nothing but good things about those positions and the people in them.
Yeah.
And how they're helping our students.
That's right.
Especially with the stress levels, et cetera. If you remember, they were in here, I don't know if it was this year, last year, sometime, talking about some of the
They did-
anti-stress programs
that's right.
that they were implementing.
Yep.
And,
Chill Out
yeah.
was the name of the
And
program.
I know a lot of people who go way back to the old days, not young people like me, but people who go way back say, what do we need that kind of stuff for? And it's a far different world. When we applied to go to college, it wasn't anything like what our kids face today. It's enormous pressure, and that pressure
It is.
requires more assistance and guidance.
And I've seen some pretty interesting programs in other districts. And with 2 guidance counselors, we couldn't
No.
even attempt to implement some of those kind
That's
of
right.
new ways, small group
Right.
sessions, meeting together,
Mhm.
and that's not even a possibility with 2 professionals.
No.
My reason for having asked that is it seems like we're almost always pushed to the brink of you have to get it or else
Mm.
scenario before we can find it in the budget to hire.
You have to have incipient failure before you
Right.
buttress the system.
And that's not how it should be.
Right. But that's the way it always is with the
I
budget.
know, but it shouldn't be.
Trying to be less reactive.
Right.
Anything more on that?
That was it. That's all I- comments I had.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Next, we have the presentation for the mathematics curriculum. Assistant Superintendent Patrick Daly.
Thank you for printing both sides.
Just have a brief presentation, folks. We've been here several times this year to share with you our thoughts about our mathematics curriculum. I did want to just take a few moments at the top to by name, to thank our math curriculum specialists and leaders and all of our teachers. Thank you. Beth Brown from the Little School, Lori Johnson from the Batchelder School, Kathy Govain from the Hood School, Maria Bunton from the Middle School, Derek Dorval from the North Reading High School. These folks, above and beyond all the great work that our curriculum leaders do, there's been an extreme amount of work to be done by our math leaders this year, and I wanted to recognize their great work. And all of our math teachers who put quite a bit of time and effort into, just extra meetings, extra time, surveys, feedback, just shadowing each other, learning a lot about new programs, professional development, trainings. They've put so much time and effort into this exploration. We've done this most thorough job to get to where we are tonight. So I wanted to thank those folks. A quick little timeline where we've been. So in the fall of 2015, we made an early presentation to school committee about our programs. We had an informational night for our elementary parents. Throughout the winter and into the early spring, we've done some solicitation from all of our educators. We've completed a parent survey. We've done another update to school committee a few weeks ago. This spring, the superintendent and I went to several classrooms, and we had a lot of conversations with principals and our math leadership. We also have informational nights for parents that are really focused not on learning a program, but on learning some of the key shifts in the math standards. So those are, there'll be one in April, May, and June, and that is a series that we will continue into the future as a part of our implementation. Our plan is to have a recommendation to you tonight, the first of 2 readings. Then the second reading would be, the next scheduled meeting, I believe, was April 25th. But there is at the next meeting, you would have a second reading and a vote. And if all goes well, for June 2016, the materials would arrive. Teachers really want to have some of the materials in their hands so they can prepare over the summer. We would have professional development for our teachers on that last day of school. The day after the last day of school for teachers would be a professional development day. And then our hope, we would bookend that with more professional development in September when the teachers return, along with implementation. So again, we piloted 4 programs this year through K-5. We did narrow that down to 2 a few weeks ago, and we've piloted 2 programs, grades 6 to 12. All those programs are aligned to the new standards. Our tools to review the program, we saw teacher input, parent input, and we had input from all of our administrators. And there are many opportunities for all of our teachers to explore all of the programs, either by just looking at materials or by actually piloting some modules with students. So our recommendations are as follows. We did look at many considerations. So we talked about multi-year discounts. So if you purchase a program every year, you're paying a lot more than if you can get a 5 or 6 year commitment to a program. There's a lot of positives to commit to a program for long term and to make that investment, but it does also have financial impacts. We've also looked at splitting payments over 2 or more fiscal years, which we think is very important to be able to do to help us fit this into our budget. We've explored digital and traditional formats. There's still, we're right at this cutting edge of textbook companies producing less printed materials and transitioning to digital. We looked at a lot of the tools that these programs have to practice with students using technology and going digital. And also the many different supplemental tools and materials. Some programs have it all included in the package. Some of these other tools and materials that are available are readily available for free or at very low cost. So we looked at all those different considerations. And our recommendations for the elementary program is the Engage New York Eureka program. If you recall, this was a program that was new to the scene. It didn't even exist when we first started talking about our pilot program. Our elementary teachers had this as one of their 2 finalists, and from what we saw in our classroom visits, the stories the teachers were telling about the transformations that they're seeing in their classrooms with students, students doing things they've never seen them able to do before with mathematics. Stories like that, time and again, from our teachers, led us to make this group decision to choose Eureka. For the secondary level, at the middle school level, we are talking about the Big Ideas math program. For middle school, this would cover grades 6, 7, and 8, the accelerated 7-8 course, as well as the Algebra 1 course. That Algebra 1 course is the same course that's taught at the high school level, and we would also look at this program for geometry and Algebra 2. We are exploring a similar title. Big Ideas does not have a pre-calculus title, but we have a similar title by the same author that we're exploring for the pre-calculus curriculum at the high school level. So something a little bit different at the high school, the leaders there are sort of a unanimous decision. They're forward-thinking in a lot of ways, explored some of the tools this year and felt that they would rather invest in some additional technology, and it was not a lot because we have quite a bit of devices at the high school at this time, but they wanted some additional Chromebooks, and they felt that they could deliver the mathematics instruction and to the students by using the Chromebooks and by accessing the online versions of the book. Now, the online version of the book, one version of it is just basically a PDF of the print materials, but what we're talking about here is more of an interactive test where students can enter, they can take quizzes, it can be scored, they can create assessments, they can monitor progress. We would certainly still have some hard copy books available for students that prefer the traditional print materials or that possibly don't have access to online access at home. And so there are some instances where that will be most appropriate, and we will have those materials as well. But it is exciting that this is what was proposed and supported by the administration at the high school and the math department, that they really want to explore this new way of accessing materials. And it's essentially what they've been doing this year. They have not really had new textbooks for the newer courses, and it's worked fine. The teachers all agree that the materials they have are working very well. So again, we are looking to fund this from fiscal year 16, 17, and 18 budgets. So again, there are possibilities to split some of the payments over 2 years. So we're thinking a few of the programs will split 16, 17, and a few we will split 17, 18. We're working very closely with Michael on this, as well as the superintendent, to figure out the best way to fit this into our budget. We will tap into some grants to see if there's some supports that we can use for text and materials for our most at-risk learners. And obviously, our district and school budgets. One of the main costs of these programs over time are the sustainable and consumable materials, which we've always had in this district. So there's the purchase of the book, but then there's the workbooks and different materials every year. So those are some of the considerations. So again, this is our first reading tonight. We then have a second reading coming up, and we're hoping after that reading to be able to get our professional development and materials secured for June, with full implementation in the fall. I did bring a few copies of materials. I'll just pass around if anyone wants to see. This is a 6th grade Big Ideas book, a high school or 8th grade Algebra 1 journal, and these are 2 teacher editions of the Eureka Math series. I did not mention before, and I think this is very important, I know we've discussed that the Eureka Math program is available online. You can print all of the modules. We decided to, if we were going with this program, we were going to go with the bound books for the teacher's edition and the bound editions for the students as well. So the model that we've priced out and that we've elected to go with would be the bound editions of this. So I will pass these around, but if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I'll share some here.
You said that the teachers will be implementing the digital texts. I might have zoned out a little bit there. Did you say that we've done gradually, or what's the plan there? Because everybody doesn't have a computer, right?
They would, so in the classroom, they would have computers. Just by the way the high school schedule is set up, we have a CART model right now. So they would be able to, when the classes are in session, they would always have access to technology. So we would have to direct a few new carts to the math department. And the fact that, one of the things we always say when we talk about introducing more devices is what's going to be different about your instruction. So the math department is showing this initiative that they're saying we want to go completely digital and we just need a few more devices. They weren't asking for every teacher having a cart. They were saying we only need a few more carts to supplement what we already have. However, a part of our future plans to roll out to a one-to-one, it certainly makes a lot of sense that if a department is already starting to move in that direction, that we would, if we were to start going one-to-one with student devices, that it would start, at the high school and they'd be able to use them for math and then other subjects as well. But we don't have that in the works at the moment.
Right, so we're not one-to-one now.
Right.
So what happens when they get home?
So when they get home, they would have to access online. And if they don't have online access, we would have the print materials for those students or devices for those students as needed.
Okay.
So we've assessed that. There's many different supports we would offer for students that would need that. But most of what they're doing with the books, they feel would not be what they would need to do at home. So there was really not a concern on the part of the math leaders that students would be using this at home as much. It would be more when they're engaging with the text in class, they'd have access to the devices, and there would be some interaction at home. And they've essentially been doing that all this year because they don't have hard copies of the book for their pilot, and it's worked out fine. They feel like it's not something they need to invest in.
I just have a question about the carts. How many do we currently have at the high school?
At the high school, I believe there are, what we try to do is put one Chromebook cart on each floor plus the library. So there's 4 to 5 right now, and then this would
4
be a
to 5
few
carts?
additional. Yeah, there'd be a few additional carts that would absolutely be directed to be available to the
How
math
many do you know exactly? Like how many carts you're looking to get?
At least 2. What they told me was if we had 2 additional carts that were at our disposal for math periods that would cover when the math periods meet. Right now, they essentially have no issues, and that would just sort of guarantee that there's always one available when a math class is being taught. These wouldn't necessarily be math department carts, but they would be there when math department classes are in session.
So my concern is if we're directing, those Chromebook carts to math,
Yeah,
the other classrooms, the other, subjects wouldn't be having access to.
sure.
So
No,
science, if they're
Right.
doing, a
They would
history
work off the
project.
existing
Right.
supply.
So the
They're
exist,
making do with what we have now, so these would be for just, largely for the use of the math department. And remember, we would be using funds that would normally be purchasing print materials, hard materials, out of the high school budget and the district budget.
Right, but my question is, okay, we're looking at possibly 2 additional carts.
But the whole high school right now operates using the 5 carts
right.
Right.
that we have. So if we purchase 2 additional, it would just mean that there's greater access for the math department for those 2. The other departments would operate using the 5 that we have.
So the 2 carts will accommodate all of the math classes?
Mhm.
Well, the math
Every
is.
single day? That,
Well,
No, no, no.
they're not going to need to use them every single day for every class that's taught.
The math department would not be using only 2 carts. The math department right now uses some of the 4 carts that are here. So they would continue doing that just as we are now, but then they would also use 2 additional carts. So no one would be losing anything. You wouldn't be, if we weren't getting the 2 additional carts, then yes, some of the other departments would have less, but we're going to do it exactly like we're doing this
carts are
year.
30, right?
Correct.
The carts are
So
there.
there's, we have a lot of classes that have 25 to 30 kids.
Right.
That's 30 Chromebooks? Is
Yep.
that-
So right now, the basic idea is if there's 2 math classes taught at the same time or 3 taught at the same time, 2 out of the 3 always have access to technology, and maybe the third doesn't. That's why they're saying have that extra set of couple of carts, and we're more than covered.
So 30
as far as what's
Chromebooks is
needed.
probably costing you with the cart.
It's $10,000.
$10,000 per cart.
So how many books would $10,000 buy you? I'm trying to gauge.
Sure.
Without the
how
cart?
much money we have if we were buying I don't want to, if we can buy the carts,
Yeah.
Right.
but I'm trying to gauge how many books.
It-
So do we have enough to buy more than 2 carts, I guess is what I'm
No,
getting at.
no.
I mean, that's my concern, because I envision, okay, say 2 classrooms have the carts.
Yep.
You go into a classroom who doesn't have the carts, the
Right.
teacher can't say, take out your books, we're going to do this
No, they-
next activity.
Right,
Is
again-
are we relying on just the projection
Not,
of the
not every,
smartboard?
not every math class needs the Chromebooks for every class.
Right.
But again, right now, they're saying they're able to get the carts whenever they need them. That's what I've been told. So there's not an issue right now getting the carts when they're needed.
Right.
We're going to add 2 more on top of that. So it'll even further make it a non-issue, because there'll be 2 carts always available for math,
But right now, most of our high school has books that they're using,
but the math
correct?
department does not, and they've
So
been doing
they
this
do
all
not
year.
use books this year at all.
They do not. They've been doing this all year
pilot
as a
is-
part of the pilot, and it's
Okay.
been successful. So now we're saying, in order to ensure that, we're going to add
Okay.
2 carts on top of that.
Okay.
And again, if our CIPC comes through, we've asked for additional carts and additional, whether it's 1-to-1 this year or student devices, but in the future, that's the idea. So we're going to slowly build toward it. So we're
carts
constantly adding more. Yes.
carts do we request in capital?
Well, it's
It's just a certain amount of money, right?
it's a certain amount of
60.
money. It would be
60,000?
yeah. It's based on a 1-to-1, but that would be essentially 6 carts that we would use strategically.
Because I'm surprised we only have 5 at high school right now. I thought we had more than that. And I know budget
Yep.
issues, but.
Yep.
So Patrick, was this a slam dunk decision? Was there a lot of discussion? Was there some strong push for one of the other programs?
Sure.
And then second, obviously, every district is gonna have a different reaction to a program. I mean,
Mhm.
there may be a lot of districts that like this, and there may be others that have read about others. And the interesting thing, some of the districts and states I read about that had an issue with this were some of the lower performing states in the country that felt it was really difficult for their kids to execute this kind of program because their standards.
Do you mean
are low.
Eureka? Is
Yeah.
that what you're, okay.
Because your standards are low. And, but just curious if you spoke with any other districts about this also.
Sure. So to answer your first question, there was, it was not a slam dunk in terms of there were 2 finalists in each area. Great arguments on both sides, 2 very good programs, people very passionate about it. I'm sure there are people who are very passionate who didn't get their choice, who are disappointed, and those who were passionate they get their choice that are very excited. But folks spoke so deeply about each program. I have a couple of qualitative pieces on Eureka here that these are quotes from our teachers. I'll read them just so folks can hear that. One person said, I'm normally not involved with teaching math, but during some of the inclusion sessions, I've noticed the fact that Eureka has vocabulary cards for students to learn from, which is, from an SLP's point of view, is a good feature. In addition, I've been told that there are options for differentiated instruction. Another person said, the parents of the kids in my classroom have given me very positive feedback about the Eureka program, and the kids really enjoy math this year. Also, I had a student teacher this year who was a bit uncomfortable teaching math, and she was able to jump right into the Eureka program with no issues at all. Another person said, I've been extremely impressed with Eureka. The program has entry points for all my range of learners. My students are all challenged, and I have not once looked for outside help to get worksheets or other materials. I can modify the curriculum too with no problem, and the students who are above grade level are challenged each day. My students have been showing success in one way or another. The parents have been satisfied with all the work my students are doing. Even though there are not all the bells and whistles of other programs have, I know my students are receiving a top-notch math curriculum. So I think that there are some challenges when you talk about other districts. We did make site visits up to Newburyport. That would be something that I would want to continue to do and get some more folks up there. We are going to invest quite a bit of time into professional development. That is so important with this. The first piece is just, the first series of professional development with Eureka is just about learning mathematics. It's about functionality and thinking a little bit differently about how we instruct with mathematics. Some of the folks that had questions about Eureka hadn't had that training, and we're still asking some of the questions that our pilot folks had at the beginning of the year. The second piece of it is about really understanding the program itself, and that would be ongoing PD throughout the year. Another district, Groton Dunstable, I was just speaking to them the other day. They're going to talk to us a little bit about some of their questions and lessons learned, let's say, from a rollout. A big piece they talked about was the parent piece, which is what we're already doing. Superintendent there was very happy to hear we're already planning some of those parent pieces to just let them see what's different about some of the shifts in the mathematics. But that superintendent shared with me the other day that she felt she was observing a classroom and she felt for the first time in her life really understood fractions, like it just clicked for her, and that was just a moment she had. So they're really thrilled with the Eureka program there this year. The Big Ideas program at the secondary level, we did experiment and pilot Eureka at the secondary level, and our math leaders at the upper levels also recommended that we really consider Eureka for the elementary level. So even though we didn't go with Eureka at the secondary level at this time, we are very confident that what they start to see in the secondary level about the students that are coming to them and how prepared they are and the foundation that we're building will open their eyes to possibly exploring a different approach. Those at the secondary level who liked Eureka were very, very passionate about it. But overall, the consensus was we were still going with Big Ideas. And Eureka in general really built from the bottom up. And from what I've seen K-12 and what some others who have explored it K-12, it's not quite as strong at the secondary level yet, but they're still building every year and adding on to it. But their elementary program is very, 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 very good from the bottom up.
I have a couple questions.
Certainly.
The concern that I have, and it's because of our meeting that we had, was because of its newness, the availability of PD from Eureka.
Yep.
I mean, I understand we're pushing as a district the need to kind of engage parents and use our teachers, and that's my concern, is that we need the writers, the actual people who are publishing this material to come in, and how available will they be to help us?
Sure. So they are available. As Julie mentioned, it's a smaller company, it's a newer company, it's not quite a Pearson or Houghton Mifflin behind it. But they are growing, they're building their PD staff. As these more districts are adopting, they're growing, they're creating more regional trainings. So in addition to the PD that we would have here, there are also regional trainings that we can send to. They have a lot of train-the-trainer programs that they're starting to develop. We've actually discussed possibly hosting one of those regional centers, that's another cost savings for their PD. So possibly other districts who are exploring the program could come here, and then that would allow us to possibly do something like split up K to 2 and 3 to 5, something we might not be able to afford to do if we're just North Reading, but by sharing it and having a few other districts pay in, it might bring our costs down. So there's a lot more. The other thing that they're doing quite a bit of is webinars. So this year, 2 of the professional development sessions we had were web-based. So we had a, picture a Skype environment somewhere like this where the person's up on the screen, they're walking you through everything. They were both very, very high quality and very well received. We did one at the Batchelder School, and we did one in the model classroom in the library here. So I think they're, where they are limited somewhat as they're growing, they're also very innovative. And the trainers, it's not every trainer that can present well through a webinar. Sometimes you get them and they set up, and the whole time they're apologizing because this isn't working, that's not working, and you wish it was face-to-face. These guys designed it as a webinar, and it was really, really well done and well received. And we had, our K-12, our high school math leader, Derek Dorval, was at both sessions and was able to see the real progression from elementary school all the way up to secondary, and thought that the webinars did a good job of communicating that.
A couple more questions. You mentioned, the online components being a little weaker
Yeah.
as far as open for parents, teachers, even the interactivity for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about what they do offer?
Sure. So, a couple of things that are the parent pieces. When we asked our math leaders to really dig deep into this, they felt that the parent supports were equal with any other program with Eureka. I'm going to focus on the Eureka piece with this. When it talks about bells and whistles, some of the other programs had built-in videos, things like that. Eureka has less of that. There are some of those pieces available, and there are other programs that are sort of sister programs to Eureka that we actually found out about. Actually, since you and I last spoke, we've explored some other materials that are free, that have videos, that have online components where you can do many of the same things, run some assessments, and the like. There were some features of other programs, because they're the same programs that are building texts and tests and state tests, that you can tap into a database of, let's create an assessment with 25 of these standards. So that's something that we certainly would have to support. That was a great tool the teachers like to have at their disposal, and we certainly want to give teachers those materials. But there are many different programs out there that offer that for either zero or no cost, so we would just have to bring those under the umbrella of what's offered. So we're exploring some different tools. And then we're also looking district-wide at some tools. We've been looking for many years at tools that can, sort of an umbrella program, we've discussed it here in the past, that would have connections to standards, to grades, to replacing Scantron with online assessments and things like that to do quick formative and summative assessments. So I think there's other tools that might do for all subjects what some other math programs would do, and we would want to start exploring those as well.
And my final question, what is the total cost?
So the total cost for the different programs, I will say that they are almost equivalent. Eureka and Big Ideas, 5-year cost for Eureka would be about $156,000. That's for the bound materials every year for 5 years. There are discounts again for the multiple years, and that's in the years 2 through 5, those consumable costs and some of the material costs are outlined there. So that's about that cost for that program. For middle school has a very different model. Their cost is about $33,000 for their textbooks. And for the high school, again, it's about, with a 6-year purchase, for those online materials, it's about $55,000 over the 6 years. So that breaks down again to about $9,000 a year, which is much better purchase. So we've been, cost was certainly a variable. We weighed out all the different costs of the different programs, and we found that they were comparable, competitive. But for folks that think Eureka is the less expensive alternative, we did not go with the free PDFs. I mean, we are absolutely paying, it works out to almost identical to what the other program would cost in terms of the numbers, very close.
You have a question on, so, follow up, so is this basically, are these costs the buy-in costs, but we're just spreading them over a number of years? So 150, we could spend the $156,000 this year, but we're still gonna get everything we need year one, but we're gonna spread the cost out over 5 years.
Exactly.
So what happens on year 6? Are we gonna need to, are there gonna be revisions, and we're
Sure.
gonna need another 156,000?
Yep, so we explored sustainability as well. So it's not really spread out, we're not paying it over 6 years, that's the cost for a 6-year purchase. We need to pay it over 2 years upfront. So after year 6, we've talked about sustainability and what that looks like. There's many different pieces that the schools will need to, because we don't really come forward with a textbook adoption more than every 10 years or so. So we're talking about sustainability of those materials shifting to the school budgets where they're, again, replacing consumables. This is where that shift to digital in the future starts to make a lot of sense, because the cost there's still a cost, but it's not the same as you're paying for all the hard workbooks and materials and books. So there are sustainability considerations when you look at those online materials.
I mean, I would think after year 6, it's almost like a subscription. You're paying like a yearly subscription, especially for like a digital.
Right.
It is, and there's, I would also anticipate in 6 years, you're going to see very different pricing from the I think it's going to be very difficult to get print materials for a reasonable cost, at least, in about 6 years. So that's,
So for Michael, is this baked into the budget? And if so, what is it replacing? In other words, if it's 156,000 that we have to pay, well, it's actually 156, 211, almost $250,000 we have to pay over 2 years. Is that additional costs, and where is that coming from?
So we've factored in, we could spread it out over 3 years, because there could be an adoption, let's say the elementary adoption, that we choose to use 17 and 18 budgets, where the secondary and the high school, middle school adoption, we choose to use 16 and 17 budgets. So we've looked at how to really get 3 budgets, 3 fiscal year funding to, in terms of to make the acquisition over for all 3 levels. And then we've also looked at available grant funding, and I've worked with, Patrick to do that, to help supplement. And through a combination of, district and school budgets of what's available, we've tried to come up with a funding plan over those 3 years to make this work. So it's doing it within existing,
So it's baked in
budget
for
funds.
17.
Right.
we have a textbook line in our academic services account also. We've been Michael and I have been talking about this purchase with Ballpark. I've been getting quotes from these folks for about 3 years, 3.5 years. Michael and I meet regularly and say, all right, worst case scenario, it could be this number. And the number is significantly lower than what that number was, but we've been kind of strategically planning how to do this. But we still need to be very creative in how we're approaching this. Like we said, emailing them constantly to try and split this out over multiple years to defer some of those costs.
And then we met with all of the principals last Wednesday about their school-based budgets and what they're spending now for materials and resources, either as a school or as a department. The middle and high school have their own mathematics materials and resource budgets, and what their commitment could be too, and got, the numbers work.
So that each individual elementary school needs to appropriate, whatever the cost is per year on top of no Atom.
Right,
But
if you-
they're aware, they're prepared.
Right.
They
Right.
understand that.
And we actually talked about No Atom the other day. If you recall with that was a multi-year budget process where we didn't have the money, we added it. It took us 3 or 4 years as part of our strategic plan. That was an addition, when everything else was cut in the operational budgets, we added that in because that wasn't something that we could afford, but we didn't want to adopt and move forward with that without that sustainability. So that was a big part of this as well. We talked absolutely the other day about what happens after year 6, 7, 8, and we want to make sure that we're not buying into some. But this fits within within our budget.
Hi, Lena Small, Deerfield Place. I had a question, I think you might have touched on it a little bit.
Mhm.
The first question that I had was with regards to
Yes, there would be, I don't have an exact number of how many students would need the access, but yeah, there's a certain amount of books that we have, and there are some books from the pilot that we already have here, but all levels, but high school especially, is really emphasized. It's about the math. It's not about the textbook. You're not sending the textbook home to teach the kids. So it's really just a matter of if that student needs support at home with some problems, they can make a copy or something. If a student, let's say a student has internet at home, but their computer breaks, we can make adjustments. They're very confident that will not hinder the student learning or the classroom experience. So it would either be a book, making a quick photocopy, printing out materials. All of these online interactive materials allow you to create a PDF or a handout that could be easily printed and handed out, or we could distribute something from school to go home on a temporary basis for a student to check out. And we have that ability at the moment already that some students take advantage of.
The other piece that I had actually leads right into that with regards to the materials.
Mhm.
I just noticed from my fourth grader that she gets an awful lot of copying problems that come home, nothing that's in the book. So that would be my question when you were speaking about materials, or Mr. Bernard was speaking about materials costs for the schools. I assume the copying costs start to rise when we're going digital, and I know that's for everybody, but
Yeah.
I want to get a sense of where those costs fit.
Sure. When you go, essentially, when you truly go digital, there should be no cost to copying. I mean, if you're going digital, everything should be done digitally whenever possible, with the few exceptions when it's not. I know that doesn't always happen smoothly. The last few years, there's been a lot of supplementing of different programs, a lot of pulling materials from certain places, and those costs are reflected in our school budgets, and we have a copier budget at each school for maintenance there. But overall, the cost of the copying, I mean, if we had gone with the all printed material, there is a cost to that, but it is significantly less than an adoption. But we did not want to go in that direction. We wanted to go with the full adoption of the book. So the idea that there would still be copying for teachers with these programs, I think it would be much less than we've seen in the last few years, where teachers, especially a few years ago before the pilot, were really, their charge was to cull materials that were out there because the books weren't created yet. I've said this many times, they just took an old book and slapped a new cover on it. So we didn't want to pay for that until they had actually caught up to them. Eureka wasn't even created at the time we started that. We spent a lot of time at that time printing from PDFs, pulling materials together, so there was a lot of copying. Still significantly less than if we'd invested in books, but I don't see the copying anywhere near that. And I think teachers are very pleased with that as well, that they will have a book and a workbook for every student. So.
And the way the elementary Eureka program is organized, student books are by modules.
Yes.
Right.
So they'll actually have, it looks like over the course of a year, 7 student workbooks or
Yep.
handbooks, whatever you call them, for each module. So there'll be information at the top explaining a concept, and then there'll be practice,
Right.
exercises, so each child will have that.
Right. And I will say, just to add on to that, the teachers have said throughout the process, there's always supplement. Any teacher is always pulling from multiple places. The textbook is not the curriculum, it's a program, it's another resource, and they're pulling from other places. But I do think in general, you'll see less need to pull from other places because we're going to introduce a program that everyone's going to use.
And one more comment,
Sure.
what I've seen of the student version of these, and I've seen it where I work now, the addition of some of the kind of the rote memorization of the facts that a lot of teachers are concerned we're not doing. They call them sprints in Eureka, and as a teacher, I really like to see those in each lesson. And then there's something also called an exit ticket that kind of is a way to assess at the end of a lesson what they've learned going forward. So those are kind of some neat concepts that I like to see.
Absolutely.
Funny, when we met with the math leaders
Please.
last week, those two very examples were spoken about by the math.
The assessments are tough, but
They spoke about the
those
sprints.
particular ones are pretty
Yeah,
important.
yeah, they did. They spoke about those two specifically.
And the sprint is a philosophical concept. Essentially, you're not supposed to get through them all. You're supposed to get as many as you can get done in a timed amount, and then you go back and check your work. And one of the online programs we were just looking at, the free programs, actually has an electronic version of that as well, which is neat. You can do that at home. You can do it in class. When you get through, if you don't enter for a while, it actually warns you and says you haven't entered. When you get through, it makes you check your work and enter the right answer. So it's really, really good to see that fluency. And at the secondary level, the folks that are very passionate about Eureka, because it's a free program, can still pull all those free sprints and free exit tickets offline and use them to supplement big ideas if they so choose. And I think some of them certainly will. I know that Maria Bunton, our math leader, Michael Votto at the high school, some folks that were very passionate about Eureka, I'm sure are still going to use pieces of it at the secondary level.
Patrick, this is somewhat off on a tangent, but part of the math program.
Mhm.
Where do we stand now? A couple of years ago, there were issues regarding Algebra 1, 8th grade.
Sure.
Where does that stand now, and is the math program in Algebra 1 at the point now where it will stay moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're in a very good place now. It was a couple of years of transition with lots of questions, lots of planning, lots of meetings, trying to fill up a whiteboard, making sure we had old Algebra 2 and new Algebra 2 and different groups. We're finally now going to, next year, be in a place where I believe all of the classes, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, are all going to be the new programs. And the students who were on the old curriculum have now moved on from those courses as well. So
My question more is around the 8th graders.
Yep.
And 8th graders taking Algebra 1.
Sure.
Is the curriculum now says only 2 classes of Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, or how does that work?
It's all based upon where they are, if they're prepared. If they're prepared for the high school course in middle school, and that number is about 60 students. That's where we are now. So at the moment, it's two classes. We've really had almost no issues with folks saying that I wish my child were in this class and they're not having access. It's really been a non-issue. There's been a few that have been on the bubble, and when they've experienced the 7-8 class, they've realized, this probably isn't right for me, because it really moves at a fast pace. You're basically taking the 7th and 8th grade curriculum and combining. The 8th grade curriculum, as we've always said, is very rigorous in and of itself. It's got so much of what we used to call Algebra 1 built into it. So it's really only for students who are able to take a high school course in 8th grade, which is not everyone, and it's certainly not the majority. It's about right to have that 1/3.
So it's we're giving them the same exact Algebra 1 course that the other kids will be taking as freshmen in high school.
But
Correct.
those, like Mel was asking, those 2 classes, those essentially are the 2 classes that are in the combined class for 7th grade.
So that's
So they have to
Right, they have to
do
do
that
7th
7th grade class,
They
that
do.
advanced. So it really couldn't rise to 3 classes because you're only starting with those 2, essentially those 2 classes
Sure.
for 7th grade.
Right.
I guess I understand, and it makes sense to me.
Yep.
I know for a long time it was all kids in 8th grade should take Algebra 1. Before that, it was no kid should take it's been all over the map.
Right.
I guess the only issue, and I guess there's no avoiding this, is there going to be kids maybe that 7th, 8th grade, not so hot math, but then they get freshmen all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they either become math whizzes or they really want to do math.
Sure.
They love it. Those kids are going to have to double up one year, right? If they want to get to calculus, there's no other.
Absolutely.
Take a
And
summer online course. I know we've offered the online courses. I don't know how that's working, but.
I can give you an update on that.
Everything we can for those kids.
Absolutely. So we always want to have multiple entry points. There's always been a history of kids doubling up for those maths. We haven't seen a tremendous change there. It was a couple years of transition. We offered the online course specifically for those 2 cohorts, the current freshmen and last year's freshmen, who did not have the opportunity to take the accelerated pathway because it didn't exist yet because we were building it. So we offered those folks the online class. The online class last year was successful. There were 20 students that took that class. A lot of growing pains, a lot of learning for us. We tried, originally it was sold to us more of something you could do over the summer. We quickly realized this is a 9th class. This is an additional class you're taking. The mode is online, but it's really an additional class. The students who did it did well and felt comfortable with it, but this year when we offered it, we started much earlier in the year, and they're going no option. They're taking the full 18 weeks that it's offered, so they started in about a month ago, and they're going until October. So it's going to overlap. It counts as a freshman year class, but it's going to overlap a little bit there. The students, we gave them a 2-week add drop window. A few dropped, but almost no issues reported this year. The students are really on their own. The teacher is very strong. We have Ms. Heinhold, a faculty member here, is the guide of that group, and she's worked great with them. Since, with all the first, issues of just getting everyone enrolled and up and running, since then, really, really smooth. Students have enjoyed that program. Now, that possibility exists. We don't quite have it budgeted. It's sort of in our plan, in our strategic plan, to increase opportunities through online. But there are other things that we've talked about in the math department about enhanced courses, just other ways you can take Algebra 1 and pieces of Algebra 2 and combine it to an enhanced course. Those things are definitely things that we've talked about to offer multiple pathways. So in addition to the doubling up, there are other things that could come along down the road. But at this time, I have not heard an outcry, and I've spoken to the high school principal, the department head, and the director of guidance there. And I don't know if you've heard anything different, Superintendent, but there's not a huge outcry that there's a stress that students aren't getting the classes they need to get to. Students who are taking calculus are still getting there at the same rate and the same pace that they were. Students are taking multiple higher level mathematics courses in their senior year, and many students are doubling up, as they always have. So we've seen that. You do still have a large number of students taking geometry in 9th grade, and now we're going to start seeing the Algebra 2 and that pathway start to emerge as we move forward.
I never got to calculus. I was lucky I got through algebra. So, but I just want to make sure that
Sure.
we're making it as easy as possible. If a student gets to that freshman year and all of a sudden decides, I really want to be able to take calculus my senior year, I've got this interest all of a sudden, we're going to make those options available.
Yes.
And the concern that I've heard from parents is that they don't understand that really the decision is happening at 7th grade.
Right.
You're getting tracked for that, advanced math class. And I think some parents may not be aware of that.
Sure.
So then when they get to high school and then, they're now realizing they're not going to get to calculus, it's almost a little too late. So I think if we really involve the parents in the decision-making process and,
Sure.
Educating them that, this is how the track will go, this is what you need to be thinking about for the future for your child, whether it's an online course or doubling up, because I think some people are surprised.
Sure.
Like, what do you mean I have to, my child has to take 2 math classes this year? How is it going to fit in their schedule?
Sure. We've had, and it's certainly not that they're tracked. That's one path. There's 3 pathways. One of them is the accelerated pathway beginning of 6th grade. But we absolutely recognize every time we speak about this that a student may not be ready for that pathway in 6th grade, but they may be ready for it in 9th grade. So we want to have multiple. So that's one way to get there, and we've been very clear. We had many parent meetings at the time of the transition, and I know that the middle school principal, part of her step up for 5th grade and part of our, her yearly meetings and open houses and orientations, and I know all of our math teachers talk about it as well, because we have criteria, and it's in our program of studies explaining there are criteria that make you at the end of 6th grade eligible. It's test scores, it's teacher recommendation, it's readiness, preparation, and we have assessments because, again, the research shows if you put a student in a position where they are not ready to take an advanced mathematics class in middle school, they become frustrated and never go back to mathematics. If they are not ready, they turn their back on it. And if we're just pressuring them that you have to do this now to get to calculus, that's a bad message. So that's one way. The other way is the doubling up piece, which many, many students do when they get to high school. And that's always been the way, even with the old system, because what was happening in the old system was we were giving so many kids Algebra 1 in 8th grade, but they weren't all mastering it. The kids that are taking it now, these are your top kids who are ready for a high school course in 8th grade, and they're ready for geometry, and they're ready to leave Algebra 1 behind. In the past, they weren't ready, and we had to run a course called Algebra 1 Part 2 at the high school, which was basically a repeat of everything from last year. So while they weren't doubling up, they were just taking it 2 years in a row. So we've kind of eliminated that piece. Now we might have some different ways to get there, like I mentioned, in the future to continue, but there's absolutely not a track in 6th grade, but there is a pathway, and then there's a couple of other pathways in the future. But I agree that we can continue, and I will speak with the middle school principal as well to make sure that we're consistently sharing that message with parents.
Right, because I have a 7th grader, and I didn't realize that, this was kind of soon to be our dilemma.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wasn't aware, and I know I've talked to many other seventh grade parents, and they weren't aware. So I think as a district, if we really kind of involve people in the process, then there's no surprises.
Sure. Yeah, we can do more. We can always do more. But we had many forums at the time of the shift, and it's now firmly in all the program of studies, but we can continue to communicate that even better.
So we have 30%, 60 kids. Is there any kind of, is that basically what you expect?
No, 40 kids,
If,
right?
okay, so if a kid's on the bubble, or even close to the bubble, and
Yeah.
a parent really wants their kid in the class,
Mhm.
what do we do? You just assess it on a case-by-case basis?
We've done case by case, and it's like I said, we've had no issues. We have had a couple of those bubble cases where we've given the opportunity, or when we explained the rigor, when we explained that this is actually taking 8th grade standards and doing it, that they've said, you know what, this isn't right, or they've tried it out and realized quickly it's not right for me. And we need to keep it at that pace. Again, to get to a high school course and middle school. And that, I think we've really done, and I think one of the best things we did is that we slowed it down. It did create this need for the online courses, but by slowing it down, by taking the time to really develop that course and not try to rush and roll it out too quickly, I think all of our teachers now fully understand the difference with that course. And, you know, essentially the students are taking the Algebra 1 assessment this year, the same assessment that our 9th graders took last year. So it's going to give us interesting data this year to see, as you say, is it the same course and how well prepared they are. That'll be interesting data to receive this year.
Hi, Linda Swanson, Deerfield Place. I just wanted to echo what Julie said, that having an 8th grader myself who is not in the accelerated program, I do hear a lot of frustration. I just want to speak for some of my friends and other middle school parents with regards to the program. And I know that it's more of a statewide thing, not necessarily a North Reading thing. I do understand that, but in essence, you're having the kids that might not be the high honor students that, you know, they're gonna take 2 math courses. I know it's only one pathway, but I mean, I was a pretty good math student and I would have had a tough time with 2 different math courses. So I'm not asking any questions, just a comment that I think there are parents out there that it's just an additional stress for them, that they're not particularly happy.
Sure. And again, those are only the students that need to get to calculus. That is not what every student needs to do.
It's the opportunity, I think, if they feel
Sure.
that it's kind of taken away.
Right. But, and again, that's not anything new. The doubling up is the same number, essentially, that it's always been. We've always had students doubling up for many different reasons.
Julie? All set? Good?
No, I read through the books, I understand more or less
I
what it is.
understood this one the best.
The dots.
Yeah,
Yeah, the-
kindergarten.
I mean, one comment that I wasn't particularly sold on Eureka when I first kind of heard and did some research, but as a teacher, the fact that it's black and white,
Yeah,
there's nothing
I
distracting.
know, I really like that.
You know, it's,
Yeah.
this is your problem, draw a
About the math.
picture, make a chart to
Very
help you
direct
solve
and
it.
clear. Yeah. Same thing in that book we
Yeah.
looked at, same thing.
And simple things in the pictures of the numbers and in the K book.
Yeah.
So much for that. I can't pass K.
Cliff just dropped out of K, unbelievable.
Well, you have to appreciate that I took differential equations 3 times before I got it passed. But that was because I got Algebra 1 in the wrong time, obviously. No one ever knew that at the time. But I looked through them, and they seem to make sense from my standpoint, and as an engineer, having done some math over the years, in a work environment, which is a little different than in a school environment. This looks, and also doing a lot of work with my grandchildren in math early on, and seeing where they have picked it up and moved ahead with what I did early on with them, which was similar to what it says in the book here, you know, counting the spaces and getting the groups of 10s and
Mhm.
how those add up and make sense. If you start early enough and get the concepts out right in the beginning, they understand what they're dealing with, and that helps, until they get to differential equations.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's really the piece, even the spatial on the page, there's more room for students to show work, to draw pictures and things. So, you know, that is certainly different there, and it takes a little getting used to, but I appreciate that comment, that once you do spend some time with it, you can understand where, and again, our teachers that have done this for the full year have seen, and they kept going back to what their students are doing that they've never seen them before. You know, I've taught first grade for this number of years, and students are doing something they never were able to do before, and it's really exciting to hear that.
That's another thing, that it looked to me like it progresses at a fairly decent pace, so that you're not going to stifle somebody by doing the same thing day after day after day.
Mhm.
It actually progresses and moves up. Not just doing 50 additions on a page, just
Exactly.
because they need to do that many times.
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Very true.
Any further questions or comments? Great. I'll entertain a motion to accept the curriculum.
I'll move.
As a first reading.
Right. I'll move to accept for a first reading the Eureka Math Program for K through 5 and the Big Ideas Math Program for grades 6 through 12.
Second.
Second that?
I think Julie
Yeah,
got
Julie
you
got it.
just a squidge before. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, thank you.
4.
Oh, sorry, 4, that's right, Jerry's not here, sorry about that.
If he was here, he would have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like to go over the K through.
I said I liked it. I
Send
didn't
that
say
book
I
to Jerry and
passed.
make sure he masters it by next week, please.
Okay.
Grab the-
There are
Madam
no-
Chairman, if you don't mind, just a quick comment. I do want to just acknowledge, and I think tonight's appropriate to do so, because you have a second reading coming, but there has been an awful lot of work done by a lot of people to pilot all of the 4 programs that we first began with this year, and under the leadership of Patrick and the math leaders and the principals. I'm very thankful to them for having done a really good job, good and thorough job, I think, being very thoughtful about approaching this and ultimately coming to what we believe was the best decision for our students. Patrick mentioned that, you know, it wasn't a unanimous vote, I'm sure, while we didn't do a necessarily a one-to-one vote, but I do think that people expressed to us their pleasure with the programs that we piloted. Patrick, would you, I'm sorry, and the fact that there would be a pilot, there would be a program in place for September. So I just want to acknowledge all of the hard work that's gone on over the last several months to bring us to the point where we are tonight, and then ultimately when we're asking the committee to take a full vote on this. So thank you.
All right, so there's no minutes, so we'll go straight to the budget update. Mr. Conley, would you like to?
Thank you. So on our budget update this evening, we actually have some information about a request to designate a school vehicle as surplus property. So I've also included a little memorandum with some information in this existing school committee policy of school property disposal procedure. As part of the budget development process, I think we know we are looking to eliminate an existing HVAC technician position. The last number of years, there's been a school vehicle that has come to, kind of equipped with this position. Given that we are kind of restructuring the department and shifting more expenses to contractual services to deliver this need, there is a vehicle that, would be surplus property. So the point of the memorandum essentially asks the school department or the school committee to recognize this vehicle as surplus property. There is a set of regulations governed by Chapter 30B in the Mass General Laws that require us to go through a very strict procedural steps of how we designate surplus property and then dispose of that property. In this instance, we would certainly pursue required by the Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, certainly other town departments or other governmental entities that may be interested in this vehicle would have to be steps that would be taken, and once all steps are exhausted, you can pursue the sale, outside sale of the vehicle as well. But at this point, there's a recommended motion. We do feel that the likely scenario in this situation is that this vehicle would be transferred to another town department that would be in need. I think that's a real possibility. And I think if you recall your memory back a couple of years ago, the existing vehicle we had, which was a 2000 vehicle, actually died out at the end of fiscal 14, and the town actually bailed us out by transferring a reserve fund transfer into our school budget at the June town meeting to allow us to go out and secure a vehicle and not have it breaking services by the amount of about $24,000. They transferred funds into our budget that year. So the estimated residual value 2 years later, a little under 2 years later, is in the $18,000 range of the vehicle.
I have many questions.
Okay.
Michael, I'm confused because the policy that you gave us talks about property that has a market value of less than $500. So I don't see how does this apply to a truck that's worth $18,000?
Well, I mean, I know in the detailed policy, I did see that. I think it's just important to note that there is, the policy is a little outdated. It goes back to 2001. There is under 30B, which is the policy that's referenced in the DO procedure. It does mention that 30B should be followed in terms of designating surplus property. So I think it's important that we bring this forward to you this evening to let you know that there is an existing piece of fixed asset by the school department that is looking like it should be designated as surplus property, given its use and the purpose that it was brought in to accompany this position, and just asking for a recognition of that and authorization that we pursue the means that necessary under Chapter 30B, which would be many of which are noted on DORR. I would kind of mention that the $500 amount is somewhat outdated.
I don't understand this policy. How can property be anything that's $500 or less? It doesn't even make any
It's a little bit
sense.
of an outdated policy.
Well, not only that, if you look at the types
Yeah,
Yeah,
of
no.
things, those would just naturally be under
right.
$500.
There's no referral to vehicles.
It's really the
or-
30B that kind of
Right, the
supersedes.
second
the
part of
policy.
that.
That's why
Right.
we're bringing it to you.
This can't be the current policy, because this says reviewed November 2000.
Oh, right, we reviewed everything.
And we reviewed absolutely everything.
Okay.
This might not be the up-to-date.
3 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, right as I came on, you guys did all your due diligence.
It
The other
is one
qu-
that's online, currently, but we can look at it.
The other question, I guess I'm surprised that there's no need for it within the district. That we can't use this truck. I guess I'm surprised that we don't have a use for it. We must have other trucks that are getting older.
It's a very unique vehicle that's specific for, HVAC, plumbing.
We can't
work.
use it to
Yeah.
plow.
It's not-
That's what I was gonna
It's
ask.
not-
only
It's
an
not,
F-150. It would not be able to be used for plowing. It's not.
Doesn't have the
duty.
horsepower and the, okay.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
And it's got a covered,
It's got a covered
Back.
back.
Oh, okay.
And I think.
Almost looks like a canteen truck style.
Can't
you
use
know,
it for a
with those-
bus or anything to take?
No, no.
I
We
think,
thought
I think-
about, we
Yeah, I
did
think,
contemplate
we're trying to do
potential
our due
uses.
diligence to, the purpose of securing the vehicle in our request to the finance committee 2 years ago was for this position, and now it looks like that's a shift, so we just, feel it's our.
Okay.
So as far as, reaching out to the town to see if they could use it, would we be giving it to them? How does that work? Would they be
So-
paying us for it? How does that work?
It would be, under this scenario, it would be a transfer of this fixed asset to the town department.
Okay.
Ultimately, and hopefully, I would hope that, because if it stays within the town, it could be maybe shared if there is a need at times for us to
Or credited
utilize
to
it.
our account?
I know.
I think that's a likely scenario. I think that, this has been discussion a little bit with the Capital Improvement Planning Committee as we look and rank the requests, and, that, it seems like they're gonna feel that there's a need for it within the town. But, hopefully it can be, if it stays within North Reading and town, hopefully if there's a need here, we can it can be
Yeah.
shared.
We also considered that if the school department were to keep it, there's an expense to maintaining it, and if it wasn't going to have a viable use, then the expense was going to outweigh its usefulness to us.
Correct.
Any other questions? All right, do we need to vote on it, or is this
There's a
just one
motion.
more?
There's a motion, I think, in your
it'd be a
packet.
good idea to
Yeah.
just officially recognize it, I do. There's a recommendation at the bottom of the.
Yep.
memorandum.
I make a motion to declare the 2014 F-150 vehicle as surplus property and authorize Director of Finance and Operations to dispose of the equipment through the appropriate surplus property procedures under regulations.
Second.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. All right, staffing none, bids and donations. I believe we have 2 donations tonight. And would you like to?
Sure. Make a motion that the school committee vote to accept with gratitude a $100 donation from Mr. Robert Nino, grandparent of an 8th grade student, to support costs associated with upgrades to North Reading's athletic facilities.
Second.
Thank you.
This is great, because.
There's a little story
Yes.
behind this that's kind of cute.
I
The
was
gen- the
wondering.
gentleman does not live in North Reading, but was here visiting, I understand, and read the article in the transcript
Oh,
while
about
he was
the,
here visiting his family.
sod and the
About the
irrigation?
desire to upgrade
That's
and
excellent.
sent a very nice note to Kathy O'Connell,
That's
the middle
great.
school principal, with a check. It was
That's
a very,
great.
very nice gesture.
That's awesome.
It was nice. He reached out and he's like, all right, how do I do this? You know,
Yeah,
That's great.
Very, very cute
It
story.
was very nice. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 4-0. Thank you. And we also have another donation from the Hood School Parents Association. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that the school committee vote to accept with gratitude $1,724 from the Hood School Parents Association to purchase a sound system and associated accessories for the Hood Elementary School.
Thank you.
I'll second, and then I have a question. Is this replacing an old system, or is this just a
Think
new?
so.
My understanding is that at the recent kind of art/talent show at the Hood School, there was a desire to upgrade it's kind of like almost a portable system that was being used, and I think that became an example of, it's not the best quality system, and so
Right.
there was a desire to replace, with a higher quality.
Again, this is something that should be paid for by the school department, not by the Parents
Would be nice.
Association, but it's a great donation.
It is.
It is.
Extremely generous.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. All right, we have subcommittee updates. Mr. Venecia is not here to brief us on the Northam. Did he brief anyone?
Nope.
No? Okay. The finance planning team met April 1st, and that's not a joke. And myself and Mr. Webster and Superintendent Bernard were there, and there really wasn't
Really
that
wasn't,
much
no.
more.
Very quick meeting.
I think it was, moved, they
Status
really
quo, pretty much.
moved to a meet on the 15th, right?
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully something will come through. I know they were working on cleaning up the DPW a little bit and tidying up their budget in light of things of that nature, so we'll see on the 15th. Athletic Subcommittee?
We spent a good amount of time talking about the field project, the irrigation and the sod. We also discussed the number of registrants for spring, which I believe is around 320.
Right.
Which is about 40% of our student body,
Yeah.
Incredible.
which is really good. Spring sports are underway. Again, that was also a pretty quick meeting. We discussed the bathrooms at the turf field.
I think if you don't mind, one thing that I'm thinking about that we've kept on, it's been on the agenda now for 2 months, 2 meetings, excuse me, is about lights, the light usage at the tennis
Oh,
courts.
right.
So I am working with both Parks and Rec and Wayne Hardiker, our facility supervisor, to have an electrician that we use for a lot of the school-related work, to look at a system where we could put some sort of a control to work the lights for the new tennis courts out back, whether it's a timer-type system or something that controls them so they're not on all the time.
Who would turn that on?
My understanding is we would be able to control the lights to program them that they're on from, say, whatever start to finish.
Oh, okay.
But they would go on when someone turned the dial, so to speak.
You know, my concern was someone at 3 a.m.
No, so they would be timed, they would be timed to go off, say, probably, I think a reasonable time would be like 9:30
Right.
PM, something like that, 9:30.
Right.
But if you were out there at 8 o'clock and turned the dial to get, say, an hour's worth of, let's say it was 8:30.
Right.
And you wanted to turn the dial for an hour's worth of time, but they were programmed to shut off at 9.
They're
It would
gonna shut off
automatically go
anyway.
off at 9, right? So there would be no ability for them to run all through the
Okay.
night. And at the
That
same
was my
time,
concern.
we don't want them to be on
Right.
from, say, dusk till 9 or 9:30 when there's nobody out there,
There.
so that's kind of a work in progress, but it was something that was on our agenda.
Point operated.
Right, exactly, yeah. Dollar operated.
Well, yeah. I mean, I do
Say how
think,
many.
I do think if we can do that, 2-3 nights a week.
So that's the system. Wayne has been in touch with an electrician, like I said, that we use for a lot of our school department work, and I also have him working with Parks and Rec, because we're not gonna move forward with doing anything until they're aware of what it is, because they, have a vested interest in that,
Right.
that facility as well.
John, you may want to, maybe we can bring it up tomorrow night, at the school building committee, but that was addressed during some of the construction meetings, and that should be in place.
That should
There's
be
a-
part of the
There's
construction.
a system to control the lights from start to finish.
There's supposed to be something there,
A timer of some sort?
Oh, okay.
tennis court,
Okay.
that
Oh.
would allow them to.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. I can ask tomorrow, either at either meeting. We have a meeting in the morning, too, but, yeah.
Great. But I do think that would, and I do, even if Parks and Rec has some programs, they could run,
Exactly.
one night a week, or.
Right.
I think Biz said that he has at least one tennis, Mr. Johnson said they have at least one tennis match.
They do.
Scheduled at night,
Yep.
so.
And I've noticed some of the summer programming through Parks and Rec will be based
Right.
here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So that's another question. If they're based here, will they have access to bathrooms?
Oh, they're gonna
No.
have a long walk down that hill.
To where? Oh.
That was just my
Well,
question,
if-
because being at Ipswich River,
The-
they have access
What's going to be
to
based at, just
bathrooms?
tennis program?
Some of the tennis programs, yeah.
Only, though, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. No, there's no plan for
Okay.
a lavatory use for
Would
that.
Parks and Rec be able to bring a porta potty yet then?
I would certainly
Summer.
entertain that discussion. No, I have not been asked, but
Well, that would alleviate the problem for the summer. 'cause
I don't think they can rely on the building.
Yeah.
Right. That was my question when I
Yeah.
saw that it was
No,
going
no
to
one
be
has
based here,
asked.
was how is that
Would you see it in
going
like the
to
insert, the
Oh,
newspaper
yeah.
insert?
In the rec
Yeah.
flyer.
Along the tennis courts too, Wayne is also having some signs made
Oh, right.
about the use of the
Right.
courts for tennis only type of thing.
Then we had a brief discussion, which we're going to put on the agenda also for the next meeting, regarding fees, mainly as related to, what do you call it?
Athletic co-op teams?
Co-op teams, yeah.
Yes.
Yep,
So that'll be on the next
correct.
agenda.
And then that'll likely be coming before the
Right.
policy subcommittee too.
Right.
All right, thank you. The upcoming subcommittee schedule, the SSBC meets tomorrow night here at 5:30 at the Distance Learning Lab. The Athletics Facilities Committee, as Mel mentioned earlier, was scheduled for tomorrow, and it's been postponed to be determined a date later.
Yep.
The Evaluation Subcommittee will meet April 14th at 3 PM in the superintendent's office. The Finance Planning Team will meet April 15th at 8:15 in the superintendent's office. The Policy Subcommittee on April 27th at 3 at the superintendent's office. NORCAM Board of Directors will meet April 28th at 7 PM at the NORCAM office. And lastly, the Athletics Subcommittee on May 10th at 12:30 in the superintendent's office. And with that, Mr. Bernard will give the administrative report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So just, I gave you all a packet with a couple of things tonight. First is just kind of in the ongoing updating for you and for the community on the Little School roof replacement project. So the invitation for bids has gone out. It's been posted, and the final bids are due by April 28th. I will just remind you, I believe I've informed you of this before, but that the bid is going out for a request for an alternate bid on the EPDM material. So there'll be pricing for basically two roof materials, the SBS system and the EPDM materials. And I just added a comment here that the project remains on schedule. We're still looking at a mid-June timeframe for kind of the start of that project, with a conclusion in mid-September, with the bulk of the work taking place in the summer months when the children are not in school. Again, just a reminder, and also for the community's edification, we do have the ALICE School Safety and Security Program rolling out across the district on this coming Friday during a professional development half-day with the faculty and staff of the district, and that program will progress with the identified trainings in the late spring and into early next fall. And then I also included for you in your packet, North Reading was invited to a conference at Hudson High School. We were one of two schools, Natick being the other, two school districts that were invited to present on what I guess would be labeled kind of an innovative digital learning model presentation. And so Dr. Daly, Dr. Downs, and Mr. Connolly and I went to Hudson High School. I think it was on the 31st of March, and I really am just giving this to you for information. I attached to you an agenda of the conference and the PowerPoint presentation that we worked off of. We presented to, I would estimate, somewhere around 300 to 350 people, mostly superintendents from across the state, but not solely superintendents. There were a lot of technology people there. The Commissioner of Education for the state, Mitchell Chester, Dr. Chester was there, as well as folks from the Mass Association of School Superintendents. So it was a nice opportunity we were invited. It was a nice opportunity for us to kind of go and showcase some of the work that has been going on with our digital learning model. And we had some nice follow-up questions asked of us after the presentation, some people, some takeaways from that. And I think people were really interested in the work that we're doing here around digital learning. So I wanted to bring it to your attention that it was something that we had participated in recently.
Another thing we're doing right in North Reading.
Yeah, it was good. It was a nice morning. It really was. It was nice to be a part of. That's all I have, Madam Chairman.
All righty. For future business, we have had scheduled on April 25th to have a regular meeting here, but I believe we are moving it to May 2nd. We'll also discuss and vote on the fiscal year budget at that time. So instead of it being on April 25th, it will be moved to May 2nd at 7 p.m. here.
Jenny, just by way of explanation, we have a finance planning meeting on the 15th where we hope to hear some more news about revenues available. And then we have school vacation the next week, and
Not much time to move on anything that we may have
it may be
learned.
difficult to get everybody together to have a meeting or a workshop that week in order to talk about it and vote on the 25th. So that's the reason for the.
Well, and you
the
won't be
second.
here, and we can't do
I
that
won't be here
without
either,
you,
right.
so. We'll move it to the 2nd so we can all be present. Then
We'll go with May 2nd, 7 p.m. Distance Learning Lab here.
Correct.
Okay?
And then the next meeting would be the week following on May 9th. It's a regular meeting here at the Learning Lab at 7. And then on May 23rd, it is our normal meeting, but it will be held at the little school instead of at the digital learning. So with that, I
John,
believe.
Just one question. On that May 2nd
Yes.
agenda, I know we had CPAC's PPS presentation scheduled on the 25th.
Yes.
Could we maybe move them to the 9th? And
I will contact Steve McManus, he's the president, and do you want me to give him the option of the
I was
two
just
dates?
thinking if we can mostly focus on
the budget?
on the 2nd and
I-
make that the main item unless something else comes up.
Barring some reason that he's not available or something, I will ask him if he
Okay.
could do May 9th.
Okay, because I
And
think.
Cynthia, I think, was going to come too, Cynthia Conan, so I'll,
That would make that agenda.
I've just made a little
for
list of
second.
folks to notify. He and Cynthia are two. Jason, you've got the change in date for NORCAM? We're not going to meet on April 25th. We will meet on May 2nd instead. And Cindy was my last notification, but she's here and Dan is here, so. But I will offer him May 9th. I'm sure he'll be able to accommodate that.
Great, thanks.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to close.
So moved.
Second?
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
See, Jerry's not here, and we get our meetings done early.